They gather in the arena, blinded by the glare of lights and the roar of voices that echo like a storm of approval. You stand at the edge unseen, while their so-called heroes march forward draped in applause. To the crowd, these figures appear untouchable, sculpted from meth and crowned with borrowed glory. But you see what others refuse to admit: their power is staged, rehearsed, a fragile theater built on fear of questioning. Every gesture, every polished word, is a shield against the one truth they hope no one ever notices. Without the audience, they are nothing. And in that silence between their performance and your perception, you already know they are weaker than they appear. You feel it like a pressure in your chest, the weight of unspoken betrayal. These idols were never built to lead, only to distract, to hold the eyes of the restless so they would not look deeper into the shadows where the real struggle unfolds. They've taught the masses to cheer at hollow victories, to kneel at hollow thrones, to mistake noise for power. But while the crowd drowns in the spectacle, you study the cracks: a twitch too fast, a word too forced, a smile stretched like a mask ready to split. And when you catch those fractures, you realize the performance is not perfect. It never was. It only survived because nobody dared to stare long enough to see it breaking. The arena feels alive, yet suffocating. Every cheer is a chain that binds the watchers. Every chant a ritual that keeps the false gods standing. But you, silent, patient, become the anomaly. You are the shadow in their cathedral of light, the one who listens not to what is said, but to what is avoided. And the more you observe, the clearer the contrast becomes. Their brilliance is artificial, but your clarity is ancient. It does not need permission, it does not seek applause. It waits, it sharpens, it prepares. As you watch, a thought creeps in: power has always belonged to those who master perception. They crafted their legend through smoke and mirrors, but the same smoke blinds them. They cannot see you, the quiet disruptor, the patient strategist, the one who does not bow when the crowd demands it. They built this arena to glorify themselves, yet it has become your battlefield, a stage where you will never perform but always prevail. Their strength is borrowed, yours is forged. Their spotlight burns hot and fleeting, your silence endures like stone. And so, as the crowd chants for their champions, you wait in the stillness beneath the noise, because the arena of illusions is not their kingdom, it is their prison. And the moment they falter, even slightly, the same crowd that worships will turn on them with the cruelty of forgotten loyalty. You don't need to rush. Time itself is your accomplice. Every cheer is closer to silence, every illusion closer to collapse. And in that collapse you will rise, not as a hero, but as the truth they never saw coming. They taught you to worship them, to see strength where there was only theater, to mistake the spotlight for the sun itself. You watched the crowd rise to their feet, roaring for the figure on stage, but you knew the sound was hollow, an echo bouncing between walls of illusion. A hero, they called them, untouchable, legendary. Yet when you looked closer, you saw only borrowed courage stitched into a costume too large for its wearer. Every movement rehearsed, every word lifted from someone else's script, every smile carefully engineered to mimic authenticity. And you wondered how many people bow to idols that could shatter with a single truth spoken too loud. Their power depends on silence, not their silence, yours. The silence of those who notice the cracks but say nothing. The silence of those who pretend the crown is real, even when they can see the cardboard edges bending under the weight of the lie. They walk like giants, but their footsteps never shake the ground. They roar like lions, but their throats carry only echoes of other men's voices. And yet the masses do not see it, they can't. To them, doubting the hero feels like tearing out the last thread of stability in a chaotic world. So they keep believing, because belief feels safer than truth. You know what lies beneath. Strip away the medals, the symbols, the applause, and you will not find steel. You will not find fire. You will find trembling hands, fragile bones, a heart desperate for validation. Without the crowd, they are no more powerful than the child still hiding behind the mask of adulthood. But they've learned the psychology of deception. They've learned that if you repeat a myth long enough, it hardens into a monument. They've learned that weakness, when wrapped in spectacle, can pass as strength. And so they stand there exalted, while you stand in the shadows, unacknowledged but unbroken. You see the difference now. They need the worship to breathe. You don't. They require the endless reassurance of 1,000 eyes. You could vanish into silence and still carry your strength like a weapon concealed beneath your ribs. This is why their thrones are fragile and yours is eternal. A throne built on perception collapses at the first gust of truth. A throne built in silence survives storms. They may carry the crowd, but the crowd also carries them, and one day, the crowd will turn away. When that moment comes, their heroes will not fall with a roar. They will fall with a whimper, like paper dissolving in water. And as you watch, you understand something they never will. A false idol cannot be destroyed from the outside. It implodes from within under the weight of its own lie. All you have to do is wait. All you have to do is see. And in that seeing, you are already more powerful than every mask they have ever worn. It begins quietly, not with fire, not with thunder, but with a breath that bends the air. You don't confront them head-on, not yet. That would only feed the illusion they built. Instead, you let a whisper slip into the cracks, subtle, almost invisible, but sharp enough to draw blood from the edges of their story. A single observation, a phrase spoken at the right moment, timed with precision like the pause between heartbeats. You know that truth does not need to scream to be heard. It only needs to be placed where silence has grown too heavy. And in that silence, the first fractures appear. You feel it as the crowd begins to shift, though none of them speak. Their loyalty, once absolute, now flickers with the faintest tremor of doubt. Doubt is dangerous. It spreads like smoke, invisible at first, curling through their lungs until every breath tastes different. They look at their idols the same way they always have. Yet something feels off, the movements too rehearsed, the smile too forced. What once seemed divine now looks desperate, and you have done nothing but plant the seed. Seeds are small, but roots split stone. This is not rebellion, not war. It is patience turned weapon. You stand in the shadows, letting the current shift on its own. They don't see you yet, not fully. They sense something, an unease, a watcher in the crowd, an eye that doesn't blink when others look away. You carry that weight deliberately, like the ancient figures carved into forgotten walls, silent but undeniable. You know the storm is inevitable, but every storm needs its first gust, and you have already released it. Inside you, there is no triumph, only calculation. You study the way their hands twitch when the questions grow sharper, the way their gaze falters when the mask slips. They feel it too. The whisper doesn't just haunt their audience. It crawls under their skin, into their thoughts, dragging their secrets to the surface. You know the psychology of collapse. It never begins with an attack. It begins with a voice that can't be silenced. And the voice is yours, though no one will admit they've heard it. They call themselves unshakable, yet you've already seen the tremor. They call themselves immortal, yet you've already smelled the rot beneath the crown. You don't need to tear them apart. You need only to hold the mirror steady. Let them see themselves through the eyes of those who no longer believe. Betrayal doesn't come from an enemy. It comes from within, from the moment their own followers realized the pedestal was hollow all along. And you simply stood close enough to remind them. The storm is near, but for now it lingers at the edge of the horizon, waiting for its signal. They still bask in the spotlight, blind to how dim it has grown. You remain where you have always been, in the half-light, unseen yet undeniable, watching as the crowd begins to shift. The whisper has already left your lips, and there is no pulling it back. The fracture has begun. The silence before the chaos belongs to you. They thought they were invincible, standing before the crowd with their voices raised like thunder, their names carved into marble by blind devotion. You watched them rise, watched them bask in the glow of borrowed greatness, but you never flinched. You knew the day would come when the mask would slip, when the myth would bleed at the edges. And now it begins, one move from you, subtle, precise, deliberate, and the weight of their illusion cracks. It is not a scream that breaks them, not a clash of swords, but the soundless force of truth cutting deeper than any blade. Their hands tremble where once they waved with authority. Their voices falter where once they commanded obedience. And the crowd, that endless sea of belief, begins to sense what you already knew: the gods they worshipped were only statues made of dust. You feel the shift ripple through the air, the way silence suddenly roars louder than applause. Eyes widen, breaths hitch. It is the moment before lightning splits the sky, when nature itself holds its breath. They stumble, not because you struck them, but because the lies they built can no longer hold their weight. You see the panic flicker in their gaze, the desperate search for footing on ground that has already vanished. For years, they rehearsed their strength, perfected their roles, painted themselves as unbreakable titan. Yet in a single moment, the stage beneath them turns fragile, brittle, unworthy of carrying their swollen crowns. The betrayal is not yours, it is theirs. They betrayed the crowd that trusted them, betrayed the image they worshipped, betrayed the very story they told about themselves. And betrayal always demands a price. You watch the crowd's faces turn, not with hatred, but with the hollow ache of disillusionment. They do not cheer anymore. They do not kneel. They only stare, as if waking from a fevered dream. And in that awakening, the once mighty becomes small. The titans are trembling, not from your strength, but from the unbearable revelation that their borrowed armor has been stripped away. You stand in the shadows, unmoving, untouched. The power you hold is not loud, not desperate, not decorated with banners. It is the kind of power that breathes in silence, that does not announce itself yet reshapes the ground beneath every step. They fall because you expose what was already true. And in that fall, the entire order they built collapses like a cathedral hollowed out by time. You don't smile. You don't celebrate. You only witness what you always knew: the mightiest tremble, not when they are defeated, but when the truth arrives, quiet as ash, relentless as dawn. And as the silence deepens, all eyes shift toward you, not to worship, but to wonder what force has walked among them unnoticed, dismantling gods with nothing but presence. They don't collapse in a single instant. Collapse begins as a tremor inside them, invisible to the crowd, but visible to you. You notice the way their eyes flicker too long, the way their breath shortens when silence stretches. Once, they carried the illusion of certainty like a sword. Now, the weight of that weapon bends their wrist. You see the strain that others mistake for confidence. That is the psychology of ruin, not being struck from the outside, but corroding from within. Fear is the most efficient poison. It doesn't attack directly, it lingers. It spreads through veins like smoke, suffocating from the inside out. When you strip away the mask, the crowd doesn't need convincing. Their hero's trembling voice does the work for you. Their posture folds in on itself. Their words turn brittle. This is the unseen battlefield, the war between the persona they built and the truth they can no longer conceal. Their collapse is slow, but merciless, because it comes from every direction at once, internal panic amplified by external doubt. The audience once worshipped their perfection. Now they notice the cracks you planted. Doubt multiplies in silence. One whisper, one hesitation, and suddenly the entire edifice tilts. Their followers shift in their seats, sensing betrayal they cannot yet articulate. Betrayal not from you, but from the one they trusted most. It's not that you made them small, it's that they revealed themselves as small the moment you pressed the pressure points. You didn't invent their fragility, you revealed it. And nothing burns deeper than the realization that the figure they cheered for was never solid, only hollow stone painted gold. Their gestures grow frantic, their hands move faster, their voice sharpens, but desperation is the loudest confession. In trying to prove they are untouchable, they prove the opposite. Panic leaks from their pores, a scent sharper than blood. The collapse becomes inevitable because control is a performance, and performance requires rhythm. The moment they lose rhythm, the illusion shatters. They can't regain it. You watch their empire tilt on its foundation, not because you struck it, but because truth has no mercy on castles built in air. And here lies the darker truth. Collapse is not a sudden death. It is a drowning. Every second, their lungs fight for oxygen, but the crowd no longer breathes with it. Each gasp betrays them further. Each glance toward the audience confirms the nightmare they feared: judgment. That judgment isn't loud, it's quiet. Quiet is lethal. The silence of those who no longer believe becomes heavier than any blade, and you in that silence are unshaken. They fall not with thunder, but with whispers that echo louder than applause. That is how the mighty unravel, not from attack, but from exposure, not from force, but from truth. They stand in the spotlight, sweating under the weight of their own legend, while you remain in the shadows, steady and unseen. Their voices crack, their movements betray desperation, each gesture louder than the last as they claw for control of the stage. You do not move. You do not need to. The silence around you becomes a weapon sharper than any blade, and it cuts through their theatrics with surgical precision. Where they once commanded adoration, they now beg for belief. And the more they beg, the more the crowd begins to notice the cracks they had been trained to ignore. The spotlight burns them alive. It magnifies their trembling hands, their darting eyes, their hollow smiles stretched too thin across their faces. Every attempt to reclaim dominance only deepens the pit beneath them. And yet you, rooted in the quiet, become something else in their minds. You are not fighting for approval. You are not reaching for recognition. You are the immovable figure just beyond the light, the one they cannot touch, the one they cannot reduce. The crowd shifts in its allegiance without even realizing, drawn not to spectacle, but to gravity. You feel the transfer happening like an ancient ritual, as though the very air has chosen sides. Their spotlight has become their execution chamber, while your shadow becomes sanctuary. You carry no armor, no rehearsed speech, no hollow myth, and yet every second that passes strips them bare and cloaks you in something unamiable. Power is no longer in their hands. Power breathes where silence stands, and silence stands with you. They speak louder, faster, more erratic, their words scattering like birds startled from a tree. But the audience no longer listens to sound, they listen to absence. They study you, your stillness, your refusal to perform, and in that refusal lies the revelation. Control was never about brightness, it was about endurance. You endured the shadows while they worshipped the light, and now the light has betrayed them, exposing not strength but weakness. The crowd does not cheer for you, not yet. They do not bow, but you feel the weight of their eyes tilting, an unspoken acknowledgement, a shifting tide. They do not see you as a challenger. They see you as proof that the myths they clung to were never real. The more the so-called heroes stumble, the more you rise, not by motion, but by contrast. You have become the black mirror reflecting their collapse, and in that reflection, the crowd recognizes something truer than the show they were fed. The spotlight shrinks, suffocates, consumes the last fragments of their grandeur, and still you wait in the quiet. Because real dominance does not shout. It lingers, it watches, it survives. You are not crowned, you are not celebrated, and yet you are remembered. And memory is the only throne that cannot be stolen. The crown does not shatter with thunder. It slips, almost soundless, as though gravity itself has decided the charade has lasted long enough. You stand in the stillness while they clutch at air, desperate to hold on to a symbol that no longer belongs to them. Their hands tremble, their voices crack, their eyes dart toward the crowd that once worshipped them without question. And the silence grows heavier than applause ever could. Because silence carries truth, silence makes illusions bleed. You don't move to strike, you don't raise a hand, yet every eye shifts to you as if the stage itself has betrayed its masters and turned toward the shadow. They thought defeat would come as spectacle, fire and fury, a violent overthrow that could be spun into a martyr's tale. But it didn't. It came in whispers, in the faltering of a voice that once commanded thousands, in the stutter of a gesture that once looked unbreakable. And the people see it. The crowd, blinded for so long, feels the spell dissolve in real time. They stare not at their champions, but at what those champions have become, hollow vessels pretending to be titans. The fall is not cinematic. It is worse, it is ordinary. And that ordinariness cuts deeper than any sword, because it exposes how fragile the entire myth has always been. You watch the moment their faces shift, the moment when fear sinks into their bones. It is not fear of you. It is fear of being truly seen. Every lie, every inflated gesture, every staged victory crumbles under the unbearable weight of exposure. They are naked without the costume of belief, stripped bare by nothing more than stillness and truth. You see their desperation, the frantic searching for words that once carried the power of scripture but now sound like broken syllables scattered in the wind. And you feel no need to answer. The silence has already spoken for you. The crown lands not with a clang, but with the soft inevitability of a truth too long ignored. It rolls across the floor, its shine dulled, its meaning emptied. No one dares to pick it up. The audience does not cheer, they do not reach for you with outstretched hands. They simply stare, wide-eyed, breathing in the revelation that the gods they knelt before were nothing more than men painted in gold dust. A truth that cannot be unseen, a truth that rewrites loyalty in an instant. You do not stand taller, you do not proclaim victory. You remain exactly where you were, rooted in shadow, untouched by the chaos unraveling before you. Because you were never fighting for the crown, You were waiting for it to fall, and in that quiet collapse, you understand the final irony. They were never defeated by you. They were defeated by the emptiness within themselves, revealed at last beneath the weight of their own crumbling throne. The dust never announces when it settles. It drifts quietly, like ash after a fire, coating everything that once seemed invincible. Their heroes lie in fragments, and the crowd that worshipped them stares in uneasy silence, torn between mourning what they lost and realizing it was never real. You don't need to speak. The absence of your words is louder than their cries. The stage lights that once crowned them burn too brightly now, exposing every crack, every flaw, every secret. And as they tremble under the heat, you remain in the coolness of the shadows, untouched, steady, unshaken. You feel the shift ripple through the air. Where they once commanded devotion, now there is only doubt. Where they once carried themselves like giants, now they shrink into figures too small to even cast a shadow. The betrayal cuts deepest not because they fell, but because they allowed themselves to be believed in when they knew their strength was only borrowed. The crowd doesn't hate you for what you've done. They hate themselves for not seeing it sooner. That's the quiet power you hold, the ability to turn blind faith into vision, to reveal the scaffolding behind their temples. You walk away slowly, not because you need distance, but because power never rushes. True dominance does not cling to applause or linger in the rubble it created. You leave them with their questions, their fractured loyalty, their desperate search for another savior. And in the silence of your step, something ancient stirs. The watchers in the crowd, the ones who were never fully convinced, see you differently now. To them you are not the destroyer, but the reminder that truth always emerges. No matter how carefully buried beneath costumes, crowns, or carefully rehearsed myths, power is not in wearing the crown. Power is in knowing you could wear it, yet choosing not to. Power is not in standing beneath the light, desperate for recognition. It is in commanding the shadows, where silence becomes a weapon sharper than steel, and presence weighs heavier than armies. You don't need to announce victory. The battlefield has already chosen its survivor. Their idols fell loudly. You endured quietly. That difference is everything. You know this cycle will repeat. New names will rise, new facades will be built, and crowds will cheer again as if they've forgotten the ruins beneath their feet. But you also know something they don't. Every throne sits on borrowed time, and every performance cracks under the gaze of someone who refuses to look away. You are that gaze. You are the fracture, and as the world searches desperately for its next hero, you vanish into the silence, carrying with you the only kind of power that cannot be stolen, bought, or broken. The power of remaining unseen, untouchable, unforgettable.